Hi there, I'm Karen Dunn of KMD Productions. From the equipment manufacturers to the engineers to the business people behind the scenes. Over the years, every member of the pro audio corner of the music industry have become family to me, and it's my job to bring the whole eclectic crew together. Each episode, I'll introduce you to one of these characters and open a window into my world of creating community in pro audio. Thanks for tuning in to One and Dunn. Hi, today we are welcoming scoring mixer Alan Meyerson. Hi, Alan. Thanks for being here today.
Hi, Karen. Good to see you.
Now, I know we've known each other for a while, but do you know how we met? I don't remember a particular event. It must have been at one of my events, maybe my golf tournament.
It would definitely be the golf tournament. Yeah, because I was a regular at the golf tournament for quite a while, which I always loved to go to, and if not, it was at a show or something. I don't know. It's like when two people are in the industry this long, sometimes you forget where you meet. You just sort of meet.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Have you ever had a problem with people used to come up to me all the time when I would see people and they'd say, "Oh, hi, how are you?" And I always think I've never met them before. And I didn't want to introduce myself, and they were almost offended because I didn't remember meeting them at whatever event that we had met. Does that ever happen to you?
I've had many senior moments like that. Usually I just blame it on that. And the thing, I sort of made a rule at some point in my life where I just wasn't going to use first names, because I'm even when I know someone a long time, I'm pretty sure that I'm going to get their name wrong. So I just try to avoid that at all costs. You know, I've sort of got my code names that work for everyone. So
yeah, I like at trade shows when the badge is forward facing and their name's big.
Absolutely.
Then I can pretend.
Yes, that's right.
So while I was doing some research on you, I looked on the internet, and according to the internet, you're one of the greatest movie scoring mixers of the modern era.
That had nothing to do with me, that sentence. That was a product. Okay. That was a product of Mix with the Masters. That's it.
Okay. It sounds really good, though. I like that.
It's a little bit less humble than I choose to be, but
yeah.
I don't know if that's true, but all I know is I keep working. So my theory is I don't judge myself. I just do the work and let someone else judge it.
Sure. Okay. So can you tell me a little bit about how you got to where you are now?
Well, I started, it's a long journey, but it started at Brooklyn College as a trumpet major, and then sort of an immediate realization that I just didn't have what it took to be a professional musician, and that's all I'd ever thought I wanted to be. And literally roaming the hallways of Brooklyn College, wondering what I'm going to do with my life, I heard music. And so I was walking towards the music. There was a door open in Gershwin Theater, which was Brooklyn College had Whitman and Gershwin theaters, and the music building, the performing arts building. And I walked in, and it was a sound studio, and there was a guy there named Frank, and I said, "What's this?" He goes, "Oh, this is where we record all the performances and stuff like that for everyone, and we edit all this material." And I'm looking around, and there's this big Roger Mayer, now of course it's like 32 input probably, but a Roger Mayer console that was sitting there unwired and all that. And I started talking to him. He goes, "Would you like an internship?" And I said, "Sure. I mean, beats going to classes." So I sort of stopped going to classes, and I took an internship there, and I soaked it in like a sponge. It felt like a really good fit for me. I sort of, even when I looked at that, small live console, I sort of, my brain figured out that there was a signal path, and I didn't look at it and just see a bunch of lights and knobs and think to myself, "Oh my God, what is that?" My brain sort of just went right to, "Oh, this does this and this does that," even without any knowledge whatsoever. And, it was a great experience. I learned how to solder. I learned how to build patch bass. I learned how to, learned how to edit on, a 1/4 inch, 7.5 inches per second on classical music. So it was without even an editing block. I mean, you just take the two pieces and cut it. And it was a great experience. And through that, there was a piano tuner there who said that one of his clients was opening a studio in Midtown. And so I got a job at that studio. And to make a very long story a little bit shorter, I got a job at that studio. It was called Counterpoint, and I started assisting on TV and radio jingles. The amazing thing about jingle work, especially in the 70s, was you did everything in one day. So you did a setup, and in my case, I'd clean the bathroom, I'd make the coffee, I'd set up set up the band, I set up the control room. 10 to 11, you record rhythm section. 11 to 11:30, you record strings. 12 to 12:30, you recorded brass. 1 to 1:45, you recorded vocals. 2 to 2:30, you mixed. By 3:30, you've already copied it and sent it off to duplication. So literally 5 days a week, I was learning from soup to nuts the process of recording professional level music from one of the greatest engineers of all time, in my opinion, who is unsung, but except by me, a guy named Gary Chester. How to do it over and over and over again. And it was just, yeah.
Did everybody meet those timelines?
Oh, almost guaranteed. Almost
Wow.
guaranteed, And everyone was, I talk a level of professionalism. We know that level in the film industry. It's, not like the record business where there's all this, there is no, everything has been sorted out and figured out and the timings and everything going in. I'm sure there was an outlier who wasn't quite that structured, but
Right.
in the world I was, this was the super highest level. These were advertising agencies like J. Walter Thompson and Ogilvy and Mather, and music houses like HEA and Tom Dawes Music and Crushing Music. This was the best of the best. The engineer I was working for had the world-class clientele. And you learned fast how to do things. And then, of course, I had the skill set of a classical trumpet major, so I was a good music reader, and I understood orchestral sort of how all that stuff works. And so all of this stuff just got planted in. And then I went into the record business. In the early 80s, I started mixing some dance music with a producer named Arthur Baker, and it seemed I was good at it. And so I was doing dance records for a while, and although I was working at a good level, I never felt quite as comfortable with it. And then I got into the record business and started mixing albums. I mixed hundreds of albums, the highlights being like New Order's Technique and Brian Ferry's Bête Noire, Orchestra Maneuvers in the Dark, Cameo, like a list of R&B and sort of more British pop stuff than American rock. I never really did much rock music or anything like that. So I did that for a while, and I thought, well, this is going to be my career. I'm going to be a record producer. And at the time I was having that vision, what a record producer was changing, because, music was starting to be made in people's houses on computers with the keyboard. So, when I was coming up, the big guys were Phil Ramone and obviously Al Schmidt and a guy named Alex Satkin, who I idolized, who did Foreigner and Simply Red and stuff. And they were engineer producers. So you could come out of the engineering world to become a producer. But then as time went on and the 80s went on, it became more and more obvious that what you needed to be a successful producer was to be a musician producer, a guy who could, rewrite the bridge or play a good guitar part, and I just didn't have that skill set. So it was very frustrating. And I moved out to LA, and, I was doing okay. I was doing fine. I was making a living. I bought myself a little place on the beach, and I was getting by, but I never really felt like I was home, And then through a series of happenstances, I met the people that were running what at the time was called Media Ventures. And through that, I met Hans, and he knew some of the records I had worked on. And I, he came out of pop music. I came out of pop music. I understood dance music. He wanted his music to have a little bit of that attitude in it. So, at the end of my desire to be a record producer, I'm walking the beach and trying to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. And lo and behold, I end up with an opportunity to make a longer story short. I met Hans, and they asked me to do a session on a Saturday with a director named Penny Marshall, and Penny, who is also from Brooklyn, and me, I'm from Brooklyn. We hit it off, and it was a percussion session, and it became, Hans pretty quickly saw that I was covered. I knew what I was doing, and he actually left and sort of left me to produce the session. And I thought that I didn't even know if I pissed him off or anything. So anyway, I get a call the next day, and I come down. I'm thinking maybe I did something wrong, and he wants to yell at me, so he basically said, "What are you doing for the next 3 months?" And that has turned into 28 years. But so I've done now, and I've never been an engineer, a staff engineer anywhere. And Hans, is, one of my, obviously the client that changed my life, but they gave me the freedom and the flexibility to have my own life. I never wanted to be an employee. So I, sort of developed my own little brand or and I work with a bunch of different composers. Now the thing that is most exciting for me is working with young composers who are, climbing the ladder and seeing just all the beautiful talent that's out there.
Okay. I have a question to go back to, but that was one thing I wanted to touch on. So you've been in the industry for a long time. How do you stay creative and, and keep outputting new rather than just keeping with what's worked in the past?
Well, I mean, the interesting thing about that is I don't look at my job as a primary creative endeavor. I have to be creative, but what I'm really working with is someone else's art. So, I'm a service provider. So I sort of try to glom my creativity off of what the process they're doing is. So I feel like I have this bag of tricks, right? And when I meet Pinar Toprak, who's looking for a certain sound and stuff, I go and I pull trick 23, 49, and 61. And I go, well, that, why don't we try this and do that? That would be very interesting. Or Chris Bowers, where he wants to do this piano kind of score for King Richard, and so I have an idea for a piano sound, and then in the world of mixing, it's I'm constantly, I'm never satisfied. I've never ever, and nor will I ever be satisfied with my work. So I'm constantly trying to get it better, improve it, and so that process is an ongoing process. I do have a template that I work with, and over the course of time, that template changes all the time. So obviously, when I work with a guy like Hans, I have a style that I work within, and I try to build my world around what would complement that style. When I work with a guy like James Newton Howard, who's a much more organic kind of driven guy, I try to move to the things that I think he would like. And then when I work with, and so on and so forth. So I try really,
right.
What I think that as a mixer and as an engineer or any service provider, the way to be successful is to be adaptable. So you have this wide range of skills, and then you adapt it to whatever the project or the composer or the person you're working with needs.
Okay. So I love movie scores. I have no idea how they're done. So I was wondering, can you take me through the process of where it starts and how it ends up the finished product?
Well, there really isn't one process. I guess there's a generalized version of the way that works. So,
okay.
So the film is made, and then it depends on whether or not in the beginning they choose a composer. A lot of times on most movies, the choice of composers comes after the film is shot, and then there's a rough edit done on the film, and then there is either a film editor, or if there is a music editor that's brought into the film by the director, then there'll be what's called a temp score put in there.
Okay.
And the temp score could be anything from material from anything. It could be a million different composers built, just things that they throw up against the film to see if it moves the story along, or if it slows things down, or if it works, it's the right climate for it, or stuff like that. Or if they know that they're using a composer per se, they'll probably lean on that composer's music and build a temp score, unless it's specifically told not to do that. So that temp score is built, and then through that, they go through the process of deciding who would be the right composer or something like that. So say they pick Hans. Okay, Hans is an easy one to talk about because everyone knows his work. So
right.
They pick a Hans, and then the director sits down with Hans and they talk about the style of what they want. And then what a lot of people are doing now, composers, is they write these suites, like a 5, 6, 10-minute suite, based on the emotional the emotional direction of the film, and not necessarily written to the picture. So they do that. They create themes. If there's the bad guy theme, like if you think of a Dark Knight, there's the Joker theme, there's the Batman theme, there's the Two-Face theme, there's the all that, and they sort of build a track, and they go through that with the director, and they kind of get to what they think the temperature of the music should be. And once they do that, they start using that as their temp music and cutting it into it. And then at that point, they have what's called a spotting session, okay? And the spotting session is they literally sit there with the director, the film editor, the composer, and whatever team is around all of those three people.
Uh-huh.
And they go through the movie and they go, okay, I want music to start here and stop there. If it's so, say that it's at the beginning. I want the music to start right at the end of the credits and stop when the guy gets out of the car, right? So that now becomes what is known as cue 1M1. So it's the first cue in the movie. It's a music cue, and it's the first cue in the reel, 1M1, or it's the first reel of the movie, 1M1. And then they say it starts at this time code, it ends at this time code, and they talk about the arc of that, and they go through the movie that way. So you could end up with 4M39. So in reel 4, there's a chase scene, and they want chase music, but they don't want it to be too percussive because they want the sound effects to be, like they talk this. It's just a very free form conversation where you sort of get the idea of what the director's looking for, and you translate it into something that works in musical terms.
Are you in the conversation at this
Only
point?
if I'm asked to be, because I'm on some other movie. So for me, my job comes later on. So I get involved sometimes in the early days if they're developing their sonic template and they want my input to that, if they want me to maybe mix their demo or whatever so that they can know what reverb they might want to use or how do they want the low end to sound. And then maybe I'll get involved with recording maybe some of the solo instruments or getting a guitar sound or a solo violin sound or, but not that often. So I really get involved more like on a day-to-day basis when we go to orchestra, if it's an orchestral score, which most are. And I record the orchestra and I record all of the stuff that goes on that. There's been a synth master made by the composer's team. So now I'm combining all of the live elements with all of the pre-recorded elements because in 2021, 99.4% of all scores has a combination of the two. And then I go into a mix room and I create a mix that I deliver to a stage where that gets combined with dialogues and sound effects.
Okay, so do you think that it's advantageous to have some kind of classical background to be a score mixer?
It certainly, if you're going to want to, really, there are guys out there that aren't big orchestral guys, and they really look at the thing as a total thing. Like I have clients where all I do for them is mix the orchestral stem, So they're not really orchestral people, and then they just treat the orchestra as one other element. For me, because I'm based in that world, I tend to really, then there are, like John Williams engineer and, Dennis Sands and all these guys are phenomenal engineers. It's really about the orchestra, and the pre-records sort of take care of themselves. And I don't mean to demean the way that they do it, not at all. They're awesome at it. From my world it's like 50-50. I treat everything with the same amount of respect. So I'll sit there and slave over a percussion sound, and then I'll slave over the orchestra and try to, I like my things to be a little pushy and punchy, and some people love me for that. Some people absolutely hate me for that. Some people think I'm the end of modern film score. That when I started, it all went downhill. And that's fine. They say there's no such thing as bad advertising. So you can hate me or love me as long as you know who I am.
So I know about studio mixers. I know how that process works and what's needed for that. What's the main differences between, why would someone want to be either a studio mixing engineer or go into score mixing?
Well, no lead vocals. I don't have to deal with crazy singers, and I don't have to worry about radio formats, and I don't have to worry about, when I was in the record business, I did this record and they made me remix it because there was a saxophone on it, and they wouldn't play it in certain formats because there was a saxophone on it. Wow.
Really?
Yeah. It happened all the time, so there is the lack of that. There's a certain mentality in the record business that became less and less appealing to me over the course of time, where mixers are disposable and they send it to 5 mixers, and and I don't know, it wasn't my cup of tea, and I also felt that there were people out there that were doing better work than I was, and that was really hard for me to handle, and so for me, the answer for me is that I love the storytelling aspect of film score. So I love the fact that it's collaborative. Like just in terms of what the music is and does, and I can talk to the technical side of why I like it better than records too. But but in terms of that, it's like the fact that I'm helping move along emotion and narrative for me is very exciting. I just love doing an action cue in Thin Red Line, or I love doing, a dialogue driven cue in As Good as It Gets, or creating a signature sound in Dark Knight or something like that, and just that to me is exciting. And I think also in my case, it fits like a glove who I am creatively, musically, and technically. So it was like, it took me 25 years to find what I was really the right guy to do. So, and I think that for other people, it might be a similar thing. They just enjoy the process of it. And I also enjoy the problem solving of it. I get, on some movies, I have cues that are 1,000 tracks. So I'm dealing with, these which is kind of, and not to make a political statement, but the fact that that you cannot get nominated for an engineering Grammy if you do film score is a little bit, and taking myself out of it, Sean Murphy doing, Schindler's List, Dennis Sands doing Forrest Gump, me doing Gladiator, the fact that these can't be nominated for engineering is sort of, with all due respect to all of the great engineers that work on the ones that get nominated, we're using, orchestral miking techniques and working with 1,000-track mixes and stuff like that. It's a little unfair.
Yeah.
Enough said. Okay.
I understand. Okay.
So that's my I just enjoy it so much more. The time flies away when I'm working. Whereas in the record business, it didn't quite feel that way near the end. At times it did. In the early days,
right.
When I'm doing Brian Ferry, it felt like that. When I'm doing New Order, it felt like that. New Order, I was at Peter Gabriel's studio in Bath, England. It was phenomenal, and so I had great times, and I had a future. I just didn't want the future that was laid out for me, or where I thought my future would go in that world.
So was it hard or scary to make this change? Because you were on a path, right? You could have continued in this, and it's similar but different. So was it hard to take that step away from what you knew was working?
So I'll tell you the story that I tell people when they ask me that question.
Okay.
About a year or so.
Wait, this isn't a unique question for you?
It is, but so about a year or so, 2 years into my doing film music, they had just started this, DreamWorks, they had just started up. And about that time, I had a great friend, this A&R guy named John McClain, who was, an A&R guy at A&M Records, and through him I became very, very close friends and became Herb Alpert's engineer for many, many years and stuff like that. And John called me up and said, I'd like you to come work on this Michael Jackson record. So I was like, great, sure. And so he's like, because I had mixed a couple of albums for John and he loved my mixes. So they wanted me to come do vocals with Michael. So I did vocals with Michael, and I spent 2 weeks they booked me for 2 weeks just to sort of have this experience and see if I was a good fit. So I do these vocals for 2 weeks, and at the end of it, they said, we'd love you to stay on the record. And so at this time, DreamWorks was starting up, and they were about to do their first animated feature called Ants, the Woody Allen.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So if I had stayed on Michael's record, I would have had a pass on Ants, right? And I sort of looked at, Michael Jackson, everyone's dream of an engineer, this film. And I thought to myself, if I do Michael for 2 years, I'm going to disappear into the Michael Jackson vortex, and I'm going to come out and it's going to be Alan Who, and God knows what I would have gotten from that. Plus, I've been there and done that, and I didn't want to go into that world. So I decided, let's make a life commitment. I'm a film score mixer. And I did Ants, and I never looked back. And it's been a phenomenal decision on my part. I still do records, by the way. I did Moby's last record, and I still do the occasional record. I just don't do that many of them.
Yeah. Okay. So what do you think are the most important characteristics of someone who wants to become a successful score mixer? What kind of temperament do they need to have? What kind of things do they need to do in order to assure some kind of success?
Well, you need thick skin. You need to understand that you're not done until it's delivered what needs to be delivered for the next day. So that could be 6 o'clock at night. It could be 6 o'clock in the morning. It could be 6 o'clock on Thursday. You know, you got to do what you got to do. You got to realize that your name, as Al Schmidt would always say, your name's not on the front of the record, it's on the back of the record. and so you're there to fulfill the dreams of someone else. And that which I think is for any engineer, but in the film score world, it's really, really, like, I don't have I don't get a cue. And like, if it was a record and it's like, I think this will be better without that guitar. And I take the guitar and I play it for the band and like, hey, you're right, it was better without. You can't do that in the film world, because this thing has been vetted by the composer, by the director, by the producer, by the film editor. So by the time you get it, basically the balances and the intention are what they are. All you can do is make a better sounding version of that, So you have to have that sort of zeitgeist about it, where you're really someone who's supporting someone else's dream, in my belief. And then, I don't know if I mentioned having a thick skin, but you really have to have a thick skin. So if you don't have a thick skin, good luck.
Are you ever working on projects where, it sounds like you can't really do anything other than make it sound the best that you can, that you just don't like the whole direction of how it sounds?
I might be lying if I say no. I there have been those in the past, but the vast majority of what I do, and maybe it just speaks to who I've had the opportunity to work with, hasn't been that situation where, there's plenty of times where I do a mix. One of the greatest Zimmer lines ever to me was we were doing Black Hawk Down, and he had this big suite, and I mixed this big suite, and I just finished mixing this other movie, Time Machine, which was this beautiful score with beautiful reverb and everything like that and everything. So I do this incredible mix, and everyone's in the control room. Lisa Gerard is there, and all the guys that played on, and everyone's high-fiving each other, killing it. Hans comes in, I play it for Hans. He listens to it for about 8 bars, hits stop, and looks at me and goes, "Darling, you're mixing the wrong movie." And he's like, "This is not that movie. Turn off the reverbs. Take off the nice EQs. This is not that movie." So, I had to redirect myself. But once I was able to get into that frame of mind, it was fine. I know, as a rule for me, that if I get too emotionally attached to any piece of music, then I'm really looking at my sort of dream of it and not their dream of it,
Right.
And so I have to be very careful when I really get attached. I always say to my assistants, this is the one that's going to get thrown out. This is the mix that's going to get thrown out. And that happens at times, but I get better and better at that. So, it does sometimes go off the rails, but for the most part, I've been really lucky that way.
Okay. And then I know that you're about to start a new project. How do you prepare when there's something new about to start?
Well, the first thing I do is I get as many of the mock-up mixes as I can to sort of understand what the score is and think about what I can do to help it. And so the movie we're starting tomorrow, we're setting up orchestra at Fox, and there's a lot of piano stuff in it, and sort of made a decision about how I thought the piano would sound good and everything like that. And so I just build it from the point of view of the music that I hear. How's the action music going to sound? Is it going to be, is it going to be a lot of pre-recorded percussion mixed with live percussion? Is there, I get all the notes and details. I start having regular conversations with the music editor, and I find out who's doing the final mix, the dub. In this case, it's one of my best friends. So, it makes so much of this stuff easier because I trust him,
Uh-huh.
So, and then I just start getting into it. And then, of course, I have my team, and they start building mix sessions based on, the templates that I've developed over the years of what reverbs I want to use and how I want to set up my mixing environment, how big the score is, how many stems I need to deliver to the stage when I'm done, and stuff like that. And just start, a lot of it is just one foot in front of the other. A lot of it is repetitive from movie to movie, but then there are aspects of it that you have to really tailor to the particular project.
So is it just a time thing and experience for you to be able to create all these templates that you're able to draw on it sounds like for all your movies, you're able to grab certain ones and use them
Well, I mean, I've been developing sort of templates for years, I just, my setup morphs and morphs and morphs and morphs. So depending on the size, I can scale the setup. If it's a massive movie with like Dune, okay, for example, like a movie like Dune, where I have to deliver an unbelievable amount of stems and it needs this really incredible flexibility at the dub, not because of anything that I would do, but because of decisions that are made post my mix. I have a template that is this kind of elephant of a template. But if it's a dialogue driven romantic comedy where I'm delivering 6 stems and it's much smaller and I don't need 5 reverbs set up for the orchestra for 5 different sort of sounds that I might need to set up and stuff like that. It's very simple. It's mostly orchestral. It's a clarinet solo and stuff like that going through it. Then I have, a much scaled down version, so that the goal is for me at the end of the day is, I still work on a work surface, so I don't have an analog console anymore, although I really wish I did, and I might get one of these days. But at home, I have 32 channels of S1, and then at my other studio, I have an S6 with 40 channels, is to just sort of be able to have all of that technical stuff out of my head, and all I'm really doing is beard stroking and going, oh, what does this sound like, and hitting a button and playing with that and getting into just the creative aspect of it. Once I'm on that right side of my brain, I try not to go back there. So, and to get back into the logistics stuff of it.
Okay. So do you have a favorite score?
No. I mean, I have a lot of things. I know that Gladiator changed my life. So one would have to say that would be one of my favorites. I love Thin Red Line, but going backwards, I mean, King Richard is phenomenal, and, Dune, God, he, yet again, he reinvents it, so.
Right.
I loved, Captain Marvel with Pinar was off the charts. A lot. Traffic was one I loved to do a lot.
Traffic,
Michael
yeah.
Clayton was one that I really loved a lot. So there's a lot. It's hard. All the scores I really love aren't the ones I mixed.
Okay, so I've talked to a bunch of engineers, and they don't really listen to music when they're not working. I've talked to audio post guys who don't watch movies when they're not working. Are you one of those kind of guys?
I listen to a lot of music. I don't listen to a lot of score.
Okay.
I still, I'm still stuck in my youth. I still listen to Steely Dan and Stevie Wonder and.
It's good music, good classic.
Fucking all that stuff that I grew up listening. I believe that your brain gets imprinted, and it stops imprinting at 15 years old, and everything that's been in there up to there is what you get. And
But look at the first year of our whole pandemic shutdown. All the bands that everybody was playing all the time were the Rolling Stones, Stevie Wonder, those groups. It wasn't all the new stuff happening.
Yeah, and look, I don't get me wrong. I really love and appreciate the quality of production.
Yeah.
I think that Serberginia is a genius. I think Greg Wells is a genius. Manny. I hate to mention names because I don't want to leave anyone out. I love their work. It's just. I don't want to sit and listen to Serban and go, oh, I can do that. It's just, I don't want to,
Sure.
Because I can get caught up in that. I had that problem in the late 80s with Chris, where everyone wanted your mix to sound like Chris's mix. And so I found myself spending all this time trying to match his drum sound and like, how can I get myself to use that much top end and stuff like that? Because I wasn't geared to that, and I really kind of felt like I lost my identity a little bit. When I was trying to sound like Chris or Bob or, so I sound like me. I don't know if it's right or wrong. I do what I do. Turns out that other people have, said it's good, and other people have emulated some of it. So I guess I'm doing something right, and that's great. But I do listen to Sean's work and Dennis's work, and then a lot of the younger, there's a lot of Chris Fogel is awesome, Scott Smith is awesome, Greg Hayes is awesome. They're all doing really, really great work. So the thing about doing film work is the cream rises to the top really quickly because there's so much money involved. There's so many deadlines. So if you're doing this at a level where, you've got to be good, there isn't a whole lot of, spaff out there, if you know what I mean.
Right. Okay, so one of the things I talk about in all the podcasts is community and what community means to you. Is there a scoring? Is there a community specific for scores? You know, the mixers, the people who work on films. Is it
yes.
Is it like music studios? Is it the same? Like all the engineers get together kind of thing?
Sometimes. I mean, there's Pete Dell is this guy there's a engineering lunch that they do. And, I've through the years become very, very tight with a lot of the, because I sort of was in both worlds. So I became tight with guys like Al and Ross Hogarth and stuff. But, Sean and I are very good, colleagues, you know what I mean? And the same with Dennis. There's always a pleasure to talk to them. It's always, I every time I hear something that I appreciate that they did, I always send them an email telling them how much I appreciated it and stuff like that. Fogel and I are super good friends, and we talk all the time. I have this guy Scott Smith. He works with me a lot now, and when he's a younger, he's younger. He's 40, but but he's a fantastic engineer and, helps me out on a lot of projects. And then all the studios, I work at all the studios. And so I have, these deep relationships with, Candace and all the same people that, a lot of the record guys know. And then because of Mix with the Masters, obviously, Al and Manny and Greg and all these guys, we're Andrew Sheps and I talk all the time, and so I feel that I feel that for a competitive world, it's as collegial as you could possibly get. I don't tend to work on projects with Sean, but I do get to every now and then I get to do a movie with Bob Claremont or Manny, because he's mixing the songs and I'm mixing the score.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So, what is your definition of community? And then my other community was at Remote Control. I've been there for on and off for 28 years. I have had a room there for 10 years. And before the pandemic, that was what was great about Remote Control was all these people, this brain trust coming together, hanging out. We had this big, huge table where, they would have a chef come in and do lunches and everyone would talk about what they were working on. And can you come play guitar on this? And come listen to my mix. What do you think of this? Did I miss the boat on that? And stuff. So, I'm very tribal. Okay. So I think of it as a tribe. I think of it as like-minded people who are fundamentally interested in creative excellence beyond competitive bullshit. And if that's not your vibe, then it's going to become pretty obvious pretty quickly that that doesn't mean you won't be successful at it. It just might not mean you might not hang at the Pete Dell lunch. You know what I mean? It's just that Pete Dell lunch is a perfect example of anyone can be sitting there and you can have a conversation with Al or Ivana or just like I all the names leave my head, but so my definition of community, and then as you and I talk about, I'm very involved in mentoring, and right now I have an intern from Williams College who's literally doing a class in Alan Meyerson. He's with me for the month, and he's getting credit for it and everything. And your fantastic speed mentoring thing that you do, which I mean, I only did one of them, but to me, that's the magic. I mean, that's right there is everything I want. When my ears tell me it's time to slow down and put in the hearing aids, whenever that might be, that's what I'm going to do. I mean, I'm going to continue into teaching, and Mix with the Masters has given me that opportunity to give back and to start seeing the difference. I was amazed. I never understood. When I did the first Mix with the Masters in 2014, I didn't think anyone would give a shit, right? And I found out that people loved it, and that, as it turns out, I was a pretty good communicator. And that has grown, and I feel, so I get excited about stuff like that. That's the stuff, I have these things in my life. I have the things that I have to do. I have the things I get to do, and I have the things I'm really lucky to do. And so, I have to grind through some of the projects I have to grind through.
I get to work on these great projects, and I'm lucky to be in a situation where people are interested in what I have to say.
So a couple of things about that. One is, and Andrew Sheps and I just talked about this recently when I was talking to him. There are some people like you, like Andrew, who, and there are others who are so happy and willing to share all their knowledge with people.
Right.
And I worked with one person who, it was the first time I'd seen this, and he had a class and he showed exactly how he had created this Grammy-winning song, right? So, and he told me, he said, I can give them all of this and tell them exactly what I did, but it's never going to sound the same because they are all bringing what they know into it.
I'll give you anything. I mean, I remember years ago, there were engineers that used to like hide their settings and you can have, I'll tell you, and I do. And if you go to one of my seminars, I'll tell you, you ask me anything, I'll tell you. I'll show you every trick I have because you're going to do it differently than I'm going to do it. I remember when I was starting out, and Gary Chester, I talked about this engineer, and so in New York in the 70s, you'd have a drum kit set up, and the mics would never move and everything, and you literally, the EQs are pre-built and everything like that, and Gary would sit down and record drums, and it would sound phenomenal, and I would sit down, record the same drum kit with the same mics, and I swear I didn't change anything. For some reason, it just never sounded as good, and maybe that was in my head, but the truth is that no two people are, everyone, when you're a mixer and an engineer, you make thousands and thousands of micro decisions all the time. It's not about a preset or a setting or an EQ or a type of EQ. It's about the concept of it. It's about what are you doing with that EQ? How does Bob Clearmountain get that low end? How does he get that snap on the snare drum and stuff? And finding your own way to do the same thing. And by doing your own way, or the opposite is doing it the way he does it and sort of fitting it into your world, So I always said that my mix style is a combination of Gary and Ed Sprigg and Eddie Kramer and a lot of music that I loved. I used to sit and study Steely Dan records to learn about imaging and panning and voicing and stuff like that. So you can, I'm, and I know Andrew's the same way, and I'm going to say that a lot of the guys that are, have sort of done stuff that, you can know anything that you want to know. And I'm not, if I'm going to worry about you stealing my work at this point in my life, then that's my problem and not yours.
Right. So what do you do a lot of mentoring, and like you said, the Mix of the Masters, you're doing that all the time. I know if I have things that I'm working on that include mentorship, if you have time, you'll do it. You're on the ITMA board, all this kind of stuff. What do you get out of doing this? I mean, I know what that people are getting, but what are you getting out of it?
Well, I probably get more than they do. I mean, I get the satisfaction of giving back. And there's I never feel like I'm in the wrong place when I'm mentoring. Sometimes, I might be doing something. It's like, I should be doing this, or I should be doing that, or why did I do this project and not that project and stuff? But I just never feel like I'm in the wrong place when I'm mentoring, and so, and I love seeing young people light up, it's so great. And look, it's an honor to be someone who is at a point in their career where people go on Google and they look and they go, oh my God, I love that movie. I love that movie. He did that. Oh my God. And it's, so it feeds my ego in that way too. It's in that selfish sort of self-lifting way, but then also to see them absorb the information, when they ask me a question, this guy, Peter, who's with me, he's just like going crazy right now. He was supposed to be here today, but we took today off. So this is what I do on my day off. This is my day off.
Well, I appreciate it.
I'm actually going to mix today though, but so I get a massive amount out of it. I mean, literally more than you couldn't pay me the money that would be the equivalent of what I get spiritually out of connecting with people that want to be connected with.
Right. No, I totally understand that. So I understand from Eva Reistad that you, I contacted her because I figure she's worked with you. She knows more about you than I do. So she says you're one of those people who loves to work, that you work 24/7, and this is your life. So I totally get that because that's what I do. But I talk a lot about work-life balance.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's
What do
not
you do to
necessarily
it?
true. You know, Eva has that perspective because she only sees me when I'm working.
Uh-huh.
And so I do like to have, you know, I have a 20-year-old son who's in college. I have a girl, you know, a woman, my partner who I live with, and I have my 3-legged dog and my tailless cat, my one-eyed dog, and you know, I used to play a bunch of golf, but I don't do that so much anymore because my body's sort of, you know, not working as good as it should right now and stuff. But I do love to work. I don't work to make money. I make money because I love my job. Now, let's talk about Eva for a second, okay? So
Okay.
I'm very proud of Eva. You know, Eva came to me with an incredible amount of experience and absolutely no clue of what they were doing in the world that we were operating in, and sort of grew into the role. And and honestly, and she knows this, there was a point where it wasn't working out, and I didn't know if I was going to be able to keep her, but I was reluctant to, you know, not keep her because I wasn't quite ready to make that commitment. And then we were at the NAMM Show and I saw Ivana Manley. She said, you know, what you're doing with Eva is so great. I'm so proud that she's doing it. And I said, Ivana, I'm going to tell you, it's not going as well as I'd hoped it would go. Oh, you got to give her time. So I did. And I think Ivana sort of told her that. And but so she turned into not only a great assistant, but a true friend and stuff. So I know, you know, Eva's in Dubai now. That was either for good or for worse my fault because I introduced her to A.R. Rahman, and she got this gig, and she was like, I don't think I'm going to know what I'm doing. And I said to her, that's fine. Don't worry about that. You'll grow into the work. When life gives you an opportunity to do something like this, you take it, you know. And I think she's happy with that decision. I think it's been hard, and I think it's been stressful for her. But in the end of the day, this is one of those things. There's projects I've done in my life, and this is Mark Twain said this. I said sometimes I don't like, or as Mark Twain said, sometimes I don't like writing, but I always love having written. So I might not have enjoyed doing Black Hawk Down, but I'm really glad that I'm the guy that did Black Hawk Down. So I think Eva, looking forward and looking back to this incredible, you know, I started my career, I spent 3 months in Belgium not knowing what I was doing. And I ended up doing a Chet Baker record and learning so much about life and about, you know, how to, you know, I feel for this trip for Eva, to have missed it would have been her doing more of the same of what she's done every day. And I think when you're a young engineer and you're coming up and you're in a situation like Eva, you should have as many experiences as you can and constantly push against your comfort zone so that you can see where you know, how far you can get. And I think she's nailing it. You know, it took a while, but I think she's nailing it. So I can't tell you how proud I am of her.
That's so good. Okay. One tip for someone, a student that wants to be you. Do you have any, direction for them?
One tip for a student that wants to be me, find yourself a young, super talented composer who is going to be very successful and collaborate. It's all about collaboration. Look, I was a good engineer whether or not I met Hans, but we wouldn't be on this interview. And like I keep saying, my career isn't just Hans. You know, as a matter of fact,
Sure.
I haven't done, since Dune, I haven't done a movie with Hans, and I've done 14 movies since then. So I have 3 movies with Pinar this year. I have two with Chris Bowers. I have one with Mark Mothersbaugh. I have one with Lorne. I have one with Gordy Hobb, a video game, Jedi Fallen Order. But obviously the opportunities come when when you get the chance to work with someone who you really resonate with. And again, collaboration. If you're in school and you're coming up and there's a talented composer whose music you resonate with, start doing stuff for them, start finding your way that way. And never let your ego get in the way of an opportunity to learn. And unfortunately, we all learn that lesson after doing it wrong. So I was not at 25 years old. Believe me, I would not be telling you that right now.
Right.
You know, but I've learned for me that as soon as I can get myself out of the way of what is going on, then that's when I can really be of service to the project. And you don't need to constantly remind them what you did. Like if you do this thing and listen to that guitar, it's like, I recorded that. It's not necessary. You just let, it's okay to go on. I go on social media and say, hey, check out what I did. That's fine. All that's fine. But, it's collaboration, a bit of humility. And, I always say the crossroads of hard work, good fortune, and stick-to-itiveness. What's the other one? Starts with a P, stick-to-itiveness.
Persistence?
Persistence. The crossroads of hard work, good fortune, and persistence. That's where it happens,
Okay. So I know you've traveled a lot. Do you have a favorite place?
Abbey Road.
Okay. Do you think traveling has helped with your skills mixing? Does it brought different perspectives? How has that helped you?
Like no one's business. I mean, it's just, going, I've recorded in, at every studio in London. I've recorded in India. I've recorded in Belgium. I've recorded in Eastern Europe, and I've mixed in a ton of different places, and and not only that, but people come to me from Russia to, for me to mix their music. I have had a world experience with my work. And, this record I mixed for this Brazilian guy that, has influenced the way I deal with James Newton Howard's ethnic percussion. You know what I mean? It's just all of it just sort of moshes together into what becomes my little bag of tricks.
Okay.
And I love travel. I mean, I love being in places. I love being treated into nice hotels and, and all of the stuff that comes with it.
Yeah, something just about being dumped in a different culture.
Yeah.
And just learning about that.
Well, like I said, I started when I was young, when I was 19, I ended up in Belgium for 6 months working in a studio in the outskirts of Waterloo, which is like being in the outskirts of the outskirts. It's like you're literally nowhere. And I ended up there I didn't know what I was doing and I screwed up. But even with the screwing up, it turned out to be an incredible experience. Yeah.
Okay. Last question. One of my favorites. Everybody I know is a foodie, except me, pretty much. So my question for you is, we're having dinner together somewhere in LA. So where are we going? What am I eating? What are we drinking? And what are we talking about?
Well, you're asking me this question today. So right now we're on Ocean Park Boulevard in a little tiny restaurant called Gisalo, which has just been open, where they have this beautiful outdoor area, and they make really the best New York pizza in LA at the moment. But you also can get small pizzas, and there's a bunch of lovely dishes, and it's a small menu. And we're drinking Diet Coke and sparkling water because I had the good fortune of getting sober 38 years ago, and so I was graced with sobriety, and so there isn't going to be. You have to go to other people for the wine and stuff like that. Okay. And we're talking about music and the fun new stuff, and we're talking about travel. We're talking about where did you go when you went to this place, and we're talking about our kids, and we're talking about work and what you're doing and what I'm doing, and more about the kids, and just generally
and our dogs.
And dogs. We're talking about all that kind of stuff. But just sort of generally kicking back and trying to have a nice, relaxed evening. If not, we're at a restaurant along the water, overlooking the water, and having just a lovely chilled meal. That's sort of my favorite thing to do. And I love pizza and Italian food, but a great steak is. I was a vegetarian for a while and a pescatarian, but the pandemic took care of that. I'm sort of back into the food thing right now. So, and that's what it would be. We would have just a lovely time, just chilling out, and we'd forget how much time we were there, and we'd realize that we had been talking for 2 hours.
Yeah, that sounds great. Sounds actually really nice.
Well, let's do it.
So, okay.